Hey guys, welcome back to the Unfiltered Gamer Kickstarter board game review. Today's game up on the tabletop is called Brass Empire New Canton Expansion by Rock Manor Games. It's for 1 to 5 players, about 30 to 60 minutes to play the game, ages about 10 and up. In the game Brass Empire, you're going to be playing by yourself or with colleagues, and you're trying to competitively complete a campaign scenario. Now, the beginning base game is a simple kind of deck builder that has a unique little twist on it, which involves playing cards face down, turning them face up, and then you're going to be using those cards in a Magic the Gathering style of play, where you'll be attacking other players or using their abilities once per turn and doing other certain things like that. But the idea of the game is very simple. You're going to be drawing cards from your deck, you're going to be playing them and using the different resources that you're given, and then buying new cards, putting them into your discard pile, shuffling them back into your deck, and then drawing new cards again, and rinsing and repeating that cycle. The objective of the game is to get as much brass as you possibly can, and of course the game is going to come with brass tokens, along with damage counters to signify the amount of damage that is being dealt to your buildings or even your mining platforms you're going to be using to collect additional brass throughout the game. As you progress throughout it, as soon as the brass is empty, everybody's going to take an extra turn, or finish the turn they're on, I should say, and then you're going to tally up all the brass that is in your deck as well as what is in play, and the person who has the most is the winner, along with, in the expansion, completing additional legacy style cards and scenarios where you'll be adding new cards to the deck, your deck, or even the game's deck, or completing different missions and different things in which you're going to be having a lot of different choices to create that replayability scenario. Alright, let me show you the game along with the expansion. So here we have Brass Empire along with the New Canton expansion. So I'm going to go ahead and go through all the components of not only Brass Empire but the New Canton stuff that we got as well. Now first of all, you see that there's 2 different decks of cards. One is going to be for units and buildings, and the other one is going to be for employees or resource cards that you're going to be playing throughout the game to buy more of these things. Every player is also going to get their own unique deck of cards that is going to be specific for that specific faction. In a 5-player game, there's 5 different types of colors, along with 5 different types of buildings and or units that you can purchase that are only for you and no one else can purchase them. You're also going to get a mining platform as well as a deck of cards that everyone gets. It's going to be based on a certain amount of clerks and union workers that adds up to a total of 10 cards. That is the basic game for it. In the expansion of New Canton, you're going to also be including a scenario deck. So each player is going to get a scenario deck, and based on certain amounts of games you're going to be playing, you're going to be turning over these cards, and they'll say stop and tell you what condition it is to turn over this card and acquire the new cards for the next portion of it, as well as continuing. And there's quite a bunch of different little scenario options here to make the game turn into a kind of campaign style game. You're also going to be getting an additional character card that has a little backstory, as well as a character card that you can use once per game to tap and do whatever ability it is and use that ability once. You can also upgrade this in certain later down the line expansion scenarios, and everybody's going to get one of those. I have 2 to show you guys, so the ones down here are for 2 different players, but in the expansion you will be getting, if you purchase the game, you're going to be getting 5 different decks. You're also going to be able to get a 6th player faction, and this 6th player faction is going to include cards that you can add to both decks, and you just simply shuffle them back into these 2 decks here, and it's a faction of different types, and these guys are more likely to be clerics and stuff like that. They're going to be able to heal your cards. You're also going to get in the New Canton expansion additional scenarios for the game scenario. So as you go out throughout the game, you're going to be turning these over, and then this will tell you when you're going to be turning over your unique player decks that are going to give you your own unique cards and stuff like that, or choices. So the basic legacy aspect of the game, and then everybody has their own player aspect of the game. You're going to get a rule book of the game as well as the box, and finally you're going to be getting unique tokens. These ones I have might not be in the game, they might have different types of tokens, but what I have is here brass tokens, as well as the smaller versions of that, and then damage tokens as well. And this is the setup for the game. You have 6 different cards throughout each game, and it's set up just like this so the players can see them all so they can purchase them, as well as in the game you're going to get a certain amount of brass depending on how long you want the game to be. In general, it's going to be 20 brass per player, and that will be the start of the game. So in this review, I'm going to be talking about more about the New Canton expansion and the things that are going to go on throughout the game without giving as many spoilers as I can away so you can experience it all for yourself, because it is similar to a legacy campaign in which you're going to be flipping over cards and doing new things, adding stuff to your deck as well as other decks. But I'm also going to kind of touch on the base game. If you want to learn more about the base game, there's tons of other great reviews out there that can tell you how to play that game. But I'm just going to give a basic, simple overview of the base game, as well as explaining how the New Canton expansion is added into this wonderful game. Let me go ahead and show you the style of play for the base game, as well as how the scenario of the expansions like that adds into the game. So I've gone ahead and set up a 2-player of Brass Empire because this is what I have for the new Canton expansion in order to show you guys the scenarios in which are going to be taking place throughout the legacy of New Canton. I've also gone ahead and set up the brass. In this game, we'll be starting with 40, as well as these are damage tokens that can be dealt to your buildings and or characters. Here are your 2 decks, right? You're going to have your resource deck over here, resource cards over here, and these ones are going to be your units and or building cards. There's 2 separate decks here. When they get pulled, you're going to put new ones down. I also have your main legacy deck and your player legacy decks here, your character cards here, your basic cards you can be drawn that no one else can have here, as well as your mining platform that can also be damaged, as well as you can use it to purchase new mining equipment and stuff like that, or I should say brass. You can pull brass for trading in for 2 to 1 with these cogs here. On your turn, you're going to start off with a simple deck builder mechanic, drawing 5 out of the 10 cards in your deck, and then you're going to look at them. And you are going to then decide what you want to purchase with these cards here. As you see here, I have 3 of these hammers and 2 of these cogs. And so you could purchase anything that allows you to purchase in any number of combinations. So if I wanted to, if I have this 3 hammers, I can purchase this card because it costs up here at the top right-hand corner 3 hammers to purchase this 1 card. You'd then be left with 2 cogs, and then you could purchase anything else here that you had that was for 2 cogs. Now nothing here is for purchase with 2 cogs, so if I wanted to, I could turn 2 cogs into 1 brass, and I would take one of these tokens and put it on there, and that is going to be point total or victory point total for the end of this game here. So I could take this card, and if I wanted to pick this card up, I just put it into my discard pile, and then as well as taking that brass, I would have nothing left, and these would all go to the discard pile, and the next player would take his turn. He's then going to draw his 5 cards, put a deck down, and then he can go ahead and as well buy, and he has 4 and 1 here. Also remember, don't forget to replace any cards that you buy throughout the period in time, so maybe you can purchase a card that you normally would not have on the field here. So with 4 hammers here, maybe he wants to pick up this one for 3, and as you can see, these gold bordered cards are going to be the additive cards in the expansion, the 6 player 6 faction that you can add into here, I should say. And it says that you can heal 1 damage when you play this card, as well as getting 2 hammers. It's pretty good. So you can take this one, and he would still have 2 and 1. Maybe you could purchase something that fell here. Perfect, something fell here, so he could purchase this one as well. Nope, he can't. He doesn't have enough. It would actually only be 1 and 1. Nothing to be purchased here. So he would then just go ahead and empty or discard his hand. And like I said, there's other expansions, there's other videos that can explain everything else. I'm just going to kind of explain expansion. So here, right here, is the new Canton deck. And this tells you stop, don't reveal anything until something happens, right? Well, throughout the game, whenever you place a building card from your hand, you're going to put it face down in front of you. These were buildings. You put them on your turn face down in front of you. And on your next turn, you're going to flip them over. This would be a good example of that. So if he had played this card from his hand, and he went ahead and then on his next turn flipped that over, it'll show you attack and defense and whatnot as to how this card is going to interact with other players. If it dies, it goes to his discard pile. If not, stays on, and every turn he can heal 1 damage to all of his buildings and units. It's a pretty solid card, right? Well, on here it says, let's see, draw this card at the start and read it alongside right before you start playing the first game. So this is going to tell you what to do at the beginning of the game. And it's going to give you a setup, so how many... It says here, place 20 brass into the mining pool for each player. So that's why I set it up for 40. But I'm not going to read the scenario, so I don't want to spoil it for you. And then this says, discard, draw this card when the first mining platform is destroyed in the game. And so these are mining platforms, and they take 2 damage at some point. Somebody attacks them with 2 damage. Now buildings can't attack, but they can do damage sometimes. But units can attack anything. And so if a unit hit this, it would then flip over, and that would be it would be a destroyed or mining platform, and you need to spend 1 in order to rebuild it, right? But nevertheless, that's not so important. What's more important is when that does happen, you'll take this card and do what it says. And there are cards underneath here that you're going to be able to do something with them, or put them in a deck or whatnot. Sometimes they're going to tell you that you need to take the top card of your deck aside, and then you're going to do something with those cards as well. Maybe you'll put them in your deck, maybe you'll put them in the other decks, maybe you will use them as a choice or an option or something like that. But nevertheless, it has that style legacy aspect in the game. And also, not only that, but you're going to be playing multiple games with these legacy decks here. And as you go throughout, it'll say, okay, on the next game, read this before it starts. And then you, okay, pick these decks over here and then look at those and see what those do, right? So that is kind of the aspect of the legacy game, and there's tons of missions to go through. We actually went through maybe half of this deck here, and there's still even more for us to go through. But I think we played even 3 or even 4 games of this game, and you get to do that, all the legacy stuff like that, and every game feels a little different, and you're going to be gaining points every time you win a game. So if you won the game and you took first place, you get 3 points, and then second you get 2, and third place you get 1, and so on. It's something like that, basically. You're also going to be getting these character cards, which gives you a little bit of backstory and whatnot, as well as on your turn, once per game, you can use this ability here, and it just says turn it sideways. And this one lets you draw 2 cards and discard a card. Whereas this guy over here, you can turn it and you'll gain 1 brass. And I'm sure that every other character is going to have some unique ability that nobody else has that you can kind of use to add. Not only that, but like your main deck here where you can pull from here as opposed to here, you can buy certain things that has a money value here and tells you what you can do with those cards here. You will be able to... what do you call it? You'll be able to purchase these guys, but sometimes the legacy decks of your own personal player might add stuff to this deck as well. But you're going to be playing, going back and forth, trying to collect these brass symbols, as well as whenever you play a unit card and flip it over, whether it be a building or a unit, attacking other players' stuff. And when you attack other players' units, it's going to destroy them, and you're going to gain brass for that. Or at the end of the game, if you have been working on set of units and buildings, maybe you've been purchasing these cards here, you're going to actually be getting brass at the bottom left-hand corner of these to add up to try and total your score out. Whoever has the most brass at the end after all the brass has been depleted, and there's a multitude of variety of ways that could happen. Maybe it's an event that happens in the scenario, or maybe you've just been pulling them from here in the mining platform and eventually they just kind of run out. But nevertheless, you're going to be adding the brass you have in your deck as well as the brass you have that are actually considered tokens. That game will end. You'll possibly do a scenario that includes this legacy deck, or possibly going to use your own specific decks because this thing says so. And you'll be going through this entire legacy system of Brass Empire, a New Canton. So I hope I give you a good idea of how the legacy system works. Now, I don't really want to give away the spoilers because it's so thick with story as well as the different aspects of the game. Just imagine that you could actually lose cards in your hand, gain cards, things can go into your deck, go into the other decks, that kind of stuff. That's kind of how it works, along with the fact that even the factors of the game and how it is played kind of change. Or maybe you'll be making decision-making styles in the game itself. But I also want to touch on the different cards that were added to the game with this additional faction here. And you've got stuff like this Babylon Hospital here. Once per turn, you return a unit from your discard pile to your hand. Now, units can be destroyed, and that's when they're going to go to your discard pile, but also they could get discarded, and that's when something like this would be very useful. You're going to have a lot of healing units with this additional faction, because when we first started playing this game, because we'd never played this before the expansion, we want to start with playing that, so we didn't know much about these cards here. We just played the base game. But when we added this stuff, we noticed there's tons of great stuff that helps us heal our cards and keep them alive and on the field. This guy here has an action that lets him heal 2 damage off of a target. Not only that, but he's a 1/3 as well. And it works similar to Magic, in where the attack goes to the attack and the defense goes to the attack goes to the health, and vice versa for each unit. You've got this Sultan Isem Osiris, which is return a unit or building from your discard pile to your hand. It also gives you those 2 hammers and 2 cogs, so you can use that for buying purposes. Place an employee on a building or a unit when that card would take damage. Instead, add this card to your discard pile. Add a random card from your discard pile to your hand, heal a damage, and gain +2 hammer. You'll also notice on these cards, when you pick up the game, if you pick up the game, that there's going to be larger brass symbols on some of them. Where the cards may not be as useful, but the amount of brass you get at the end of the game towards your total is going to be very, very beneficial. And you can just simply add this to the game to make it even larger than it already is, as well as using that additional thing, the additional character abilities, stuff like that. But that is a basic idea of Brass New Canton. Both the expansion kind of get a little glimpse of how Legacy might work in added to a deck builder, as well as the basic idea of how you play this game. So now let's get into my thoughts with Brass New Canton, the expansion specifically. But before I touch on that, a little bit on the game itself. When I first played the game, obviously you choose your class, you get your ability cards that only you can specifically buy, as well as the fact that it's a deck builder like many other ones where you're going to be playing cards from your hand. You draw your 5, you play them, you collect new cards, and you're kind of building your deck from there. It is a true deck builder in that sense. But the little added benefit of the buildings and units were so unique to me. It was never something I've seen in a deck builder before. Sometimes I'm going to get buildings and stuff like that, like Vikings Gone Wild, which is a really cool game, where you're going to have to buy buildings and upgrade them and whatnot. But in this aspect, you can basically collect buildings from these decks here, and as you get them, you're going to be flipping them face up on your next turn, and then you can use them, as well as units that can attack and back and forth like that. And as you kill units, you're going to be getting brass from doing that, and there's so many different ways of getting brass. It kind of gives you this plethora of different unique options in how to make this deck builder here. And there are a ton of cards in this game. There are so many unique cards. I have not gone through all of them. We've probably played about 5 or 6 times, at least 3 or 4 in just the base game. But now let me get into the expansion. So the expansion kind of adds this nice legacy aspect to the game, in where you're going to be playing multiple games over a large campaign. And it tells you when to start, when to stop, when to use these cards, and you have to kind of focus on when it's important to flip these cards over, read what they say, collect them all until the next stop card comes, as well as using your own personal deck, which will allow you to kind of increase the amount of playability in this game. In fact, from what I could tell, I had no reason to ever go back to playing the game as it is standing alone by itself, unless I was just playing a one-off game once to teach somebody how to play it. If I ever wanted to play it multiple times, or throughout maybe a week play with somebody once or twice, 3 times, it's definitely better to have that campaign. And it's replayable. You can go ahead and start from the beginning and play over a number of rounds. I, however, would suggest starting from the beginning and playing all the way through until the very end, whether it be with one person over a series of weeks, or whether it be one single day. And the games are not super quick or super long. They're right in the middle. They're about 35-45 minutes to play the game, what I've noticed, especially for a 2-player game. And what's really cool is sometimes the scenarios will make it shorter or change the way the game is played in a number of aspects. Sometimes you'll start with certain amounts of brass. And I don't want to get into too much of the spoilers, but the legacy aspect of it makes it really phenomenal and really interesting. I've yet to see a deck builder do something like this, and where you're going to be playing each turn in its own unique way, as well as getting to add certain cards to the deck, playing with cards that go face down on the buying field, and when you purchase the card on top of it, you get the unique card as well. Oh man, there's so many cool little things added to this that I love it. I mean, this is probably one of my top favorite deck builders thus far that I've ever reviewed. I really enjoy the style and the feel of this game. The artwork is pretty cool. Some people didn't like that I was playing with, they didn't like the style of faces on some of the cards, but I think we all agree that the building, all the different scenery and all that kind of stuff was really fantastic, really unique, as well as the fact that every single class you're going to be playing has a completely different feel, especially with this extra basic deck that you're going to be starting the game off with. These are all unique cards that kind of pertain to the specific class you're playing with, and the extra added character that you're going to be getting with that class or whatever is really unique as well. It's a very simple thing. You just get to use it once per game, but you'll be noticing that once you're playing this game throughout the legacy, that specific ability can come in handy very importantly on 1 or 2 specific turns. You have to kind of make your decisions up as to when you want to play it and how you want to play it and how you want to build your deck. Like I said before, tons of unique cards, and adding that 6th faction just gives it even more uniqueness. There's not a lot bad I can say about this game other than it can be long, and especially as you're learning the game. If you don't go through probably a video review having to read the rules, can be something that you have to get used to. If you're a seasoned deck builder, though, this is something that comes kind of natural to you. If you've already known how to play a couple deck builders before in this style of aspect of your 10 cards, draw 5 kind of thing, you're going to get this really quickly, and you're going to really enjoy brass, especially the added expansion of New Canton. I definitely recommend this. This is getting my seal of approval.